שלום תלמידים, האלף-בית העברית פרק ב' יצורים סופיתיים. The Hebrew Alphabet Lesson 2, Final Forms of Consonants. יש ליצורים חמישה צורה סופית בסוף לדבר. 5 consonants have a final form at the end of a word. What does that mean? That means that there are 5 out of the 22 consonants that we learned in the last video that are written differently at the end of a word to the way they would be written at the beginning or in the middle of a word. Let's look at the first of them. At the beginning of a word or in the middle of a word, kaf looks like this, as we learned in the previous video. At the end of a word, however, we have final kaf, which in Hebrew is called kaf sofit. Together, the two forms look like this. Notice that I have put the initial form on the right and the final form on the left. This is because Hebrew is written right to left, which is the opposite of English or Swahili or French or many other languages in the world. Hebrew, like Arabic, is written right to left. So I've put the initial kaf, the round one, on the right, and the final kaf on the left. Notice how the tail of the final kaf goes distinctly below the line. If it didn't, it might look a bit like a daleth. You can, for now, ignore the 2 dots in the kaf. We will learn more about them later, but it will often appear in this form at the end of a word when there is no vowel following it. At the beginning or in the middle of a word, mem looks like this. But at the end of a word, it is square, mem sofit. Side by side, the initial and the final forms look like this. Nun at the beginning or in the middle of a word looks like this. But at the end of a word, it straightens out into nun sofit, or final nun. And together they look like this. Pe, the fourth of the letters, looks like this at the beginning or in the middle of a word. At the end of the word, pe sofit, or final pe, looks quite similar to pe, but it straightens out and its tail dips below the line. Here you can see them side by side. Initial or medial pe looks a lot like a kaf with an extra thing in the middle. And final pe looks like initial pe, but straightened out so that its tail dips below the line. Tzadeh is the last of the 5 consonants with final forms. At the beginning or in the middle of the word, it looks like this. At the end of the word, it also appears to straighten out and dip below the line in tzadeh sofit, or final tzadeh. And here are the 2 forms of tzadeh side by side. So we have 5 consonants that have a special final form written at the end of a word and only at the end of a word. Kaf, mim, nun, pe, and tzadeh. All the other consonants look the same at the beginning and at the end of a word. Now let's look at a few examples of this. First, we see the word mayim. For now, don't worry about the dot and the dash under the consonants. These are vowels. We haven't learned them yet. Mayim. You can see from the picture what mayim means. Do you see how there's a mem at the beginning of the word? That is, on the right side of the word, and there's a mem at the end of the word, on the left side of the word. You see, Hebrew is written from right to left. So we read the word mem, yod, mem, from the right to the left. The initial mem has a hole in the bottom, and the final m looks like a square. Mayim. Do you see the difference between the two letters? Here we have examples with kaf. Look at the word on the right, kiseh. Again, you can ignore all of the dots for now. We will learn what they mean in a future video. Kiseh corresponds to this object that looks like it might have come from the tomb of Tutankhamun. Notice how kiseh begins with an initial kaf, a sort of curvy letter. Now look at the word on the left, melech. It corresponds to the picture of King David playing a harp. Melech, which means king, ends in a final kaf. Do you see it? It's the one with the tail that goes below the line, the letter on the left side of the word. So compare the initial kaf in kiseh on the right with the final kaf on melech on the left. You might notice as well that melech begins with an initial mem. So kiseh is spelled kaf, samek, aleph. Do you see them? And melech, mem, lamed, kaf. In all, we have 5 consonants with final forms. Kaf, v'kaf sofit, mem, v'mem sofit, nun, v'nun sofit, pe, v'pe sofit, tzade, v'tzade sofit. Here they are again. Do you see as well how 4 out of the 5 of these final forms dip below the imaginary line upon which all the other letters appear to be resting? This is an important element of the final forms of kaf, nun, pe, and tzade. When you write them yourself, make sure their tails dip below the line. Otherwise, you will not be writing them correctly.